Well, welcome to Talking Money, episode 15. Very pleased to welcome Hannah again this week. And we've got three topical personal finance subjects to go through, news stories that are making the headlines this week. And I think we've both got opinions on. We're going to start with the fact that this week it was 1 year on since the start of the pandemic. The start of the pandemic in the sense of lockdown restrictions. And we paused for reflection earlier this week to remember all the people lost during that time, and I guess also to reflect on how our lives have changed so much in that past 12 months. So we're looking, aren't we, at some research from Kantar, and they've looked at some of the habit changes, some of the biggest trends during the past 12 months. Hannah, what did you pick out of that research, which were the bits that particularly resonated with you?
Oh, God, all of them. I tell you what an anniversary to be celebrating as well, a year into lockdown, I think. And I think as well, Boris Johnson, I remember him saying at the time, it was going to be 3 weeks, wasn't it? Or something like that to calm down the virus. And here we are a year later. But I mean, there was a lot of really, really interesting stuff in here. And Kantar clearly nailed it because pretty much all of this, I was sat there going, this is so accurate as per my experience. I mean, there's a whole section dedicated to streaming more TV. And I have to say, the stuff that I'm willing to watch now, because I am very, very bored, and compared to what I would have ever bothered watching a year ago, is completely different. There's a few fun things. So Disney Plus just got the timing. They could not have timed this better. And I'm sure they didn't mean to time it as well as it did. But Disney Plus actually went live the day after UK lockdown began. So immediately they did phenomenally well because it was a new product and everybody wanted to be a part of it. I know we downloaded Disney Plus as people that never watch Disney films and don't have children. So we did that. Amazon is also a huge, huge, huge winner. And I mean, more than half of British households are now Amazon Prime members, which is astonishing.
That's just incredible, that one, isn't it? Yeah, I mean that obviously means something for streaming television, because with Amazon Prime you have access to Amazon Prime on TV, but also for our shopping habits, which we'll look at in a second. But we took Disney Plus on, and what a fantastic timing, as you said. It came with the Marvel content, which we love, and it came with the Star Wars content, and they've added a bit more in the last few weeks as well. And we keep saying, should we now cut back a bit on our TV subscriptions as things get back to normal? And I guess from a financial perspective, that's the worry, isn't it? That we've taken on new subscriptions and new habits, and then we're just going to add back in the old stuff afterwards, and we're going to be left behind with the cost base from streaming services. And we've got Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Now TV, and I think Apple TV still as well, because there were some quite interesting things on that. So that's 5 different streaming services, and our TV license, of course.
You've got a hell of a lot.
And I don't watch much TV. This is the thing. I don't like to watch much television. So I think that's the thing to think about. If you've taken on new subscriptions during the past 12 months, and then you stop watching stuff because you're hopefully getting out and about a bit more, or going on holiday, or seeing friends, which we're hoping we can do soon, then remember to cancel some of the stuff that you don't really need anymore.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, another big number that comes out in this report. So 16.7 million households have at least one video streaming subscription. Yeah. Now, again, to put that into context, there are just over 19 million households in the UK. So just think about a sea full of people. Just the amount of people now that are streaming video is phenomenal. And I imagine it is probably here to stay, actually. I think people have got quite used to just being able to effortlessly flick around and, pop onto Netflix and see what's on. Although I have considered scrapping my Netflix membership, I have to be honest.
Have you got any recommendations for good box sets that you've picked up during the pandemic?
Yes, actually. I watched Ozark this pandemic, and it has been this pandemic.
As opposed to the next one.
Please, God, never again.
No.
I watched Ozark, which actually is not something that came out during the pandemic, but I really recommend it, because if anybody has watched Breaking Bad, it's that similar, really kind of fast-paced, really interesting characters. There's a lot going on. The plot's really, really thick, but it's never slow and boring in the way that Breaking Bad could get a little bit at times. Ozark is my favourite thing.
I'll have to check that out. I'm watching The Shield at the moment, which I know is an old sort of cop drama from, I think, about 2002, 2003, something like that. And it is a bit dated, but I'm enjoying it. It's quite raw. And in the first few seasons, you used to sort of see cameramen sort of standing just out of shot, and obviously the production value wasn't as good as it could have been, but there's lots out there to explore, isn't it? Our shopping habits have changed too. Without wishing to focus too much on our television habits, our shopping habits have changed, haven't they? We're spending less cash but more contactless payments, and we've spoken about this before, and we're shopping online a lot more as well.
Absolutely. And I think as well, there's a small stat in here that did surprise me given the prevalence of Amazon. And this is that 52% of people now pay more attention to the project's product origin,
Yeah.
which is up from 47% at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, that strikes me as interesting because it feels like Amazon, for instance, business has just completely exploded. And Amazon, let's be honest, is not the place you go if you're very, very worried about your supply chain and making sure that everything is fair and, you know, and reasonable at every corner. So that's an interesting find, I think. But otherwise, it's pretty standard stuff. I mean, there's more groceries online, and I think people are probably going to stick with that. I know I'm going to stick with Amazon Fresh, which I've talked about before, because I am lazy and I can't be bothered to walk around Sainsbury's anymore. And then there's a big kind of point about here as well, about the lasting impact of the pandemic that I think has been keenly felt by, I mean, it has been keenly felt by a lot of people. So 2 in 5 people say that their mental health has been impacted. And that's generally greater among young adults and households with kids, which I think is absolutely no surprise whatsoever, because when it comes to young adults, you have all the financial worries and the career worries, and not really being at the same point that maybe you would want to be if you've had kind of life on hold for a while. And people with kids, I would have run away by this point. If I had small children during this pandemic, I would have ran miles away and lived in a field, socially distanced for a year. I don't know how anyone's done it.
It's been an experience. We had a parents' evening last night with for our youngest, and obviously done over Zoom still. And the panic was, oh my goodness, did we do enough with him during this last period of lockdown when they were off school? And the teacher, I think it was very nice feedback at the start, so saying like, well, it's good he spent so much time outside. In other words, he didn't spend any time doing the work they set for him, but he loves exploring nature and doing practical experiments and things. But no, it's been a difficult one, hasn't it? We're going to come on and talk about mental health. It's a bit of a theme actually going through the 3 stories we've got this week. But absolutely, you know, this has been a big impact for many people, and we've spoken before about how this pandemic has had a very different impact on different people, both from a mental and physical health perspective, but also from an employment and economic perspective. It's a pandemic of 2 halves in so many different respects.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And everything I see just so speaks to the fact that, yeah, there have just been completely different experiences. I imagine this has been not the worst experience if you're pretty well off and you have an enormous house and you've really just been able to put yourself away, maybe have a load of family over because you've got the room and kind of all isolate together. That's a very different situation to being in a small flat, for instance, with no outside space, and a big struggle there. There's also another section on habits that I think we should probably come to as well. I missed this one, so I was just scrolling through my notes. So gardening has become more popular. Again, not particularly surprising. Gen Z spent more time on social media, and I never thought they got off it anyway, to be honest. So that's a bit of a surprise for me. Generation X and the baby boomers are eating better and practicing better hygiene. And there's nothing on millennials. So presumably we've just done nothing different. This is how we live. And the
watch more television, stream more box sets on Netflix. Sounds it. Yeah. No, it's fascinating. And the really interesting bit for me is how any of those habits that we've adopted during the last 12 months will or won't continue post-pandemic, whenever that may be. You know, once we start unlocking and going out and doing the things we used to do, will we still be avid gardeners? I know we've spent a lot more time in our garden. We were doing it this week, finishing off some bits and pieces. I built a raised bed in the first month of the lockdown, so got some old railway sleepers, and we started growing our own vegetables and potatoes and stuff out there, which was wonderful. But I hope we keep the good stuff, and I've said this before as well, but I hope we hang on to the good habits, the stuff that serves us, and then hopefully let go of the bad stuff and the fear and the worry and the lack of social contact and the things that are detrimental to our mental health. But time will tell. Time will tell what we give up and what we embrace in the future.
Yeah, I have to say I'm becoming increasingly less convinced that is going to be the case. I think in the first 6 months I was still kind of thinking, well, people are going to learn all these new things and it's going to be great, because now why would I buy, shop baked pasta, because I know how to make my own and it's so
Yeah.
much better. But I think the problem is that life does get in the way, and somehow I felt like I had so much time at the beginning of the pandemic because I had gained a lot of time suddenly, not commuting and things like that. But a year later, I have just become used to how I've spent that time. So actually,
Yeah.
I don't even feel like I have gained the time back. For me personally, I've always run, but it tended to be on treadmills inside because I always worried, people are looking at me or I look stupid or whatever. But obviously, all the gym's closed. So I've started running more outside. And I absolutely love it. I live near the Thames and it is just my favorite place to go. And I think I do all my best thinking. And even if it's throwing it down with rain, I'll still go out and run and kind of see where the river's rising to and whatnot. And I actually think for me, I will not lose that. I think that's probably going to be something I do for the rest of my life. So I'm quite thrilled to have discovered that. But I think anything else, I'm not convinced I'll manage to keep it up.